This is Norwich Confidential, and my name is Ben Hong, and we have someone here sitting instead of Bonnie Hong, and this is Ben Lathrop. And Ben, of course, you know him very well. He used to be the past mayor of the city of Norwich. And Bonnie could not be here tonight because she's with a church group. They're having some meeting, and they want her to do some presentation, I think. So it was kind of a last minute thing. So in any case, I'm glad that I was able to get you in here, Ben, and we'll talk about something that I think we really are very interested in. And I know that a lot of our audience and listeners will also be very interested in hearing. So we'll talk about the veterans issue tonight. And as you can see, I'm wearing a patch.
Well, I thought about it. I figured that I'd wear something with Norwich on it. But Ben, I want to take this opportunity to thank you for all you do for veterans. And I know we're going to talk more about veterans, but for what you do, God bless you. There's a lot of people you've helped through the VA. So I think that's part of our mission that we'll talk about tonight as we talk about veterans issues.
That's right. And we want to identify a lot of things that may not have been met by other organizations or even the VA. But yeah, there's a lot of issues among the veterans, especially now that we have different age group of veterans and, of course, different needs and, of course, the experience that they have gone through. And I'm sure that your deployment is probably different from my deployment, and my deployment is probably different from the younger generations of veterans. And each will have some degree of experience that will carry on up to the present time. And for us to just put this as a kind of one cookie cutter is really not right. And yes, we do know that there are several veterans organizations out there. And yes, they do functions, they do their own functions, but again, there are a lot of things that we should address.
Incredibly, and I think that brings me down to my thought of support of veterans. I'll give you a little history that's why I came to you. I am a Vietnam veteran, 66 to 70. I was there 68, 69 overseas, but I'm blessed to have you as my doctor at the VA, that you've given me professional advice, and I honor you for your service, but your professionalism within, as a doctor. I think a lot of veterans look at it. Filling out the paperwork has become very bureaucratic, and it's so unfortunate because, as we said before, veterans turn to, well, let's say sometimes because of the overwhelming paperwork, it becomes so bureaucratic that they turn to illegal drugs. They need help, but and whenever you've taken a veteran that we've recommended to come see you, you've helped them fill the paperwork out. That's the key towards the process. We need all veterans to be able to, have that opportunity. We have some wonderful vet center. We have an organization in City Hall that does a wonderful job. But we need the vets to step forward and ask for help.
Exactly. And again, I just want to remind everyone that the VA, the vet center, and the veterans office here are yours. They don't belong to anybody. They belong to the veterans. And I do agree with Ben, and I understand and what you're saying. The first time I came home, and I had to go to the VA, and this was about 25 years ago, and I went to the Newington VA because I was told to go there to get my medical issues cleaned up and so on, and I was met with disrespect, irresponsible personnel.
What do you mean? Why disrespect?
For the simple reason that when I went there and I told them that I'm a Gulf War veteran, and this little intern here that would not even look at me and says, "Oh, so you're here because you get these muscle aches and fever and skin rash."
Question everything, right?
And I said, well, no, I did not come here for those because but I was told to come here because I had cancer. And so he kind of looked at me and says, oh, okay. But in spite of that, nobody would apologize.
Can I interrupt you and apologize just to break in on what you're saying, precisely what we need to do for veterans is not to forget them.
Yes,
You know, the thing is that they were rude to you, were they not? Unprofessional.
very.
Well,
very.
when we talk a little bit later in the show about
Yes.
our visionary objectives with the veterans,
And
then we'll
exactly.
show that we're reaching out to the veterans, and we will not forget them.
Exactly. And, well, so many things have changed now at the VA and in the VA system. And it had really, it had made a lot of improvement. And one of the first thing that I did when I became the Surgeon General for the VFW is this, that we get a chance to meet with the Secretary of the VA at that time. And I said, listen, I know your problems are funding and accessibility and all this personal stuff, but there's one thing that you should never and never forget, and that should be the first thing that comes to your mind, that every veteran that comes to the VA system should be met with respect and promptness, because in all the VA hospitals that I've been to, that is that seems to be the practice. They just let a veteran sit on the wheelchair and they just won't even say hello to him. And so I would say, well, hi, and what are you waiting for? And they said, well, I'm waiting for my name to come up in that screen so I can get my medication filled. And I says, well, how long have you been waiting here? Well, I've been waiting here for 4 hours. And then they just shut the door or the window down because it's now lunchtime and they won't be back until 1 o'clock or 1:30.
No compassion there, just
Exactly.
a job, and that's the problem.
And that was what I was telling the secretary at that time, and indeed there has been some improvement in terms of...
Undoubtedly. But may I add, your facility in New London is one of the best. Your staff there is incredible, very warm and compassionate, and they
try.
reach out. And I know that is appreciative of all veterans that go there, including myself.
Well, the thing is that we tried. I call myself we because I work for the VA for the last 6 years now, and there's been a lot of trial here, trial there, and so on. And what I'm trying to say is that they're trying to make one menu for everybody all over the country, but different veterans, again, different VA hospitals will have their own unique idiosyncrasy, and you get to respect that. The same thing as with the patient that comes to them. So every veteran that comes to a VA may not be pleased with a lot of the things that were done to them, and some of them, of course, will come out outright and saying, I'll never, ever come back to this place again, which I did 25 years ago. And then, lo and behold, things change. So what we have is a very good system. There's nothing else, and there's nowhere else in the world that treats the veterans like this.
Well, it's taken a lot of criticism, like you said, Ben, but consequently, it's all worked through the bureaucracy, if I might say.
Exactly. And what we lack, unfortunately, in the VA is, of course, a lot of staffing. And although we try to hire as much as we can, prior service military personnel, but the fact is that it's such a huge place that a lot of employees, of course, have no military background.
But Ben, how did you have the opportunity to take a few days off?
Well,
That amazes me.
exactly.
No,
No, I don't have a day off. So there is some. There's a reason why I thought that having a military background is very, I would say, positive when you work for the VA, and that is that you understand.
That's the key. Understand.
Understand a person who comes into you, which a lot of times civilian people will say, I don't really know what's going on with this guy, I don't know why he acts this way or why he reacts that way, and so on. Well, you have to understand what their mindset is, what they're training for. So in any case...
Well, Ben, if I may add too, they have to simplify the paperwork,
Right.
which they have to some degree, but
Yes.
that at one time was, let's say hypothetically 10 pages and they'd only get past the first page.
That's right.
That's the frustration level.
Well, that and many things else. But I'd like to have our audience give us a call if they have any questions, Ben. Well, so let's ask you, as a veteran, Ben, your own personal experience. And I will also mention to you what my personal experience is.
Well, emotionally, I'm very supportive and very patriotic as veterans, and I guess my ultimate goal in life is, as I become a so-called member of the VA, but a patient of the VA, 48 years ago serving. It's hard to believe that 66 or 70 I was in the service, and a 19-year-old kid when I was overseas. But I've become different in the manner that I want to help veterans, and that's my ultimate goal. And I guess it's my message to people out there amongst us that you and I are going to collaborate on a unique project that is similar to a club that's formed here in Connecticut since the 50s, but we can talk about that as we progress into the hour. My own personal feeling is that I wanted to get some prescriptions from my COPD, and I work at the soup kitchen, and there was a veteran there that filled out the paperwork for me, or I understood it, so I could fill out what he told me, which we got to the point that some veterans can't fill it out. But that was my first response to, get to the VA, and I'll never forget walking in at an appointment, and you opened the door and said, "Oh, hi, Ben." And then, I didn't have any idea, to some degree, that you were going to open the door and I was going to be your patient. That's a godsend. You're wonderful, compassionate. There's not enough adjectives to describe you. And I mean that from here, as a veteran. There are a lot of veterans in our community that are confronted with the same things, whether it's PTS or anxiety, depression, you name it. We all have issues. But it all boils down, we need to reach out and support veterans. They need help.
Yes, and that's very true. And I'm glad that your experience was like that, Ben, because my experience, like I said, was not like that. But at the same time, I looked back and said, hey, listen, this is our facility. This belongs to the veterans. And so what can we do to help them, and what can we do to improve that? Well, our voice have to come out and have to be heard. Our voice has to demand the changes that we want to. Otherwise, they will just shove everything down our throat. And that's what they've been doing for years. And at the time, of course, the veteran will either, okay, I'll just go away and never come back. And for that reason, I am still seeing, up to this present time, a Vietnam veteran that had never stepped foot on a VA hospital since coming back home in the 70s.
Well, mine was 48 years.
Exactly.
That's sometimes unimaginable for a veteran that needs help. And,
right.
You said it best, it epitomizes a Vietnam veteran that needs help that doesn't realize it. Right. In my life, in my busy life, working 60, 80 hours a week, and then retiring and going to, say, 15 or 20, my whole world collapsed. Exactly. Because you get overwhelmed with thoughts and this and that, and that's where we have to reach out to our veterans, because there's more out there my age or our age that have similar problems.
Right, and just trying to expand that line of thought. And yes, there are some veterans there who over the years have learned how to cope and able to live a so-called normal life and able to do and raise a family, get a job, and so on. But down deep inside them are this anger and this stress and this guilt and what else that they have covered in layers and layers and layers of blanket all over the years, and then one day just kind of explode. And there are a lot of patients who are like that. So yes, you may think that, well, gee, I really don't need that, but there are times when we're there to help. And the other thing that I noticed, man, is this, that, oh, I really kind of don't need them, I can afford it, and they can just give those services to other veterans who are in need. And that's very noble of you, but at the same time, there are some unique things that we can do that civilian hospitals or facilities don't have the capability of doing. So we do a lot of preventive medicine there also. So those are things that we want to do. It's just like one of the major issue that we are dealing with right now is to get those patients with hepatitis C treated. And those patients that didn't know that they may have hepatitis C, I am still making diagnosis of patients who'd been through Vietnam in a long time in the 70s and came home and then realized that they have contracted hepatitis C.
Yeah, well, when I came back over from overseas, I had it because where I was in Thailand at 3 different bases, it was so-called prevalent.
That's right. Exactly. So there are things that we can do. But anyways, so what do we have outside of the VA? And we have a service organization. You are all familiar with that. And I belong to one, and Ben, you may have you may belong to another one, and so on and so on. And what we do is, we have a meeting every month. We raise fund, and sometimes we have a picnic. We get together, we drink beer and do the ride, and then we maybe contribute the funding to some worthy cause and so on. And the members basically will just gather there. But there's a lot of things that's missing in that scenario, Ben.
Well, I think that's what brings me to what we had talked about, and I asked you a couple of questions on my objectives, but we'll go back a little bit on, give a little bit of history on.
Yes, certainly.
We've been working on this for a couple of years, and I know a fellow Vietnam veteran, Tom Burke, and I had started to form a nonprofit and looked at the YMCA, and we toured that, and we were overwhelmed with the condition of the Y, which will take, and I'm going to say millions, or knock it down and rebuild. And I give this young gentleman credit for trying to bring a community center there, but I hope he's going to be able to raise some money. But that brings me to where we were, and we were looking at with Buckingham Memorial and having an office and taking care of veterans. Now it's taken a new turn, and I guess it's become more involved with our objectives, but less bureaucratic, because we're going to tailor this after another club that, if I can bring that up to
Yes. So basically, Ben has a really great idea, and it's came out of his mind one day, and then all of a sudden I can see, how it can be used, and it will fill a void that is so huge that every veteran who will volunteer their time will be able to help another veteran, and it is not just a one meeting thing or one encounter thing, but it is something that you are going to be like buddies for a long, long time. So basically, it's veteran helping another veteran is the key to this, and the organization will outreach those veterans that had been forgotten. Remember the word that of Abraham Lincoln, who promised to care for those who shall have borne the battle, and for their families and survivors. So yes, we have to remember those that had been left behind, and they may have come through for treatment, but when they go home, they have nobody else to talk to, they have nobody else to really turn to.
Well, it brings it to the unfortunate wars that I guess keep the economy going as I look at it, but these young veterans coming back have experienced some catastrophic experiences with, TBIs especially, prostheses with, roadside bombs, but what we ultimately want to do is to help those veterans that, as we said before, the bureaucracy of not being able to fill out the paperwork. And I the key word that the key phrase that you said to me, Ben, was, we will not forget you. And the key there is that when they come in, when we get our organization going, we won't forget you, because we'll contact you occasionally, see how your family is and how you're doing. Exactly. We're not going to forget each and every veteran, and I mean that from here, and I know you do too.
We want to connect one veteran to another veteran brothers, brotherhood, and able to go through whatever it takes for one or two or both of them to get better, be it trying to fill in a VA application, be it trying to find out what services might be available for them at the VA, counselor and support, and even going to a doctor's office. Because a lot of veterans say, I don't have transportation. And unfortunately, because we are here in New London, the VA do not provide us with transportation. So every veteran that comes to us will have to get it through either DAV or some friends of them and so on. But we have somebody to be a reliable resource, to be able to say, oh, I can depend on him. And therefore I can go on with doing the things that I want to do.
Well, it's our goal is long-term. It's very involved.
Yes.
The organizational aspect of it is overwhelming, if I might say. The foundation is there.
Yes.
We've talked a lot.
Yes.
I'll name a few people that I honor and respect that are veterans. Tom Burke, who I certainly respect. Richard Frederick, Frank Manfredi. God, I could name 110 veterans that have reached out to help us, and name one that it's helped us with these bylaws that we'll go over in a few minutes. Jack Luty, another veteran.
Right.
But it's just overwhelmed me with Vietnam veterans and Iraqi war veterans,
Right.
Gulf War veterans that
Right.
similar in scope to what problems, but
Right.
we're all veterans.
Exactly.
Key,
And-
we're all veterans.
And to put this in a better picture, I'm going to one of our friends that used to be very active supporting the Vietnam veterans, especially the Connecticut Vietnam veteran and Norwich, and even form an organization. Well, he himself got sick recently, and he had become very, almost like, very reclusive, staying at home, had alcohol problems and so on. And one day I spoke to him and I called him up and I said, hi, how are you doing? And he says, well, I've had a stroke and so on. And I said, well, are you okay? And he said, well, family-wise, yeah, I'm okay, they're supportive. I said, well, any veterans called you? Because I know that you love to help veterans when you were in good health. And he says, well, no, nobody did.
See?
And I kind of said to myself, well, what have we done or not done to identify him, because he was so active at the time that he was healthy.
Oh, incredibly active.
And now that he is not healthy, nobody reach out to him.
But we are going to, as
And
you
this-
have, reach out to
Exactly.
him.
And this is the thing that we want to do.
Well, it can bring up the scope of our project and
Yes.
what we can direct it on, and hopefully we'll get some calls. If not, I'm sure that this will stimulate the interest from our viewing audience. But as we make a effort to have a press release that will garner all the thoughts after we get the meeting of minds together,
That's
as we
right.
said, that we get our mission statement
Yes.
and our bylaws intact. We do have a lawyer and a
Yes.
veteran, and Frank Manfredi, that has offered his
Right.
expertise. But I could name again a lot of veterans that want to help.
Yes.
We just don't want to be overwhelmed with 100 veterans and then we won't get anything done. So we're going to organize and get our mission out there. And I'll say that thanks to Jack Luty again, that got me a copy of the bylaws of the 100 Club of Connecticut, which is a wonderful club that supports police, fire, and
Yes.
corrections officers. And it's overwhelming of their bylaws of what they do to reach out. And
Yes.
we are going to reach out ourselves, but when it becomes, more of our bylaws will have less involvement with what they do.
Right.
They've been involved since the 50s and have done a wonderful job.
Yes.
We have the foundation. We have to have our meeting to put our vision objectives on the table and to organize, and organize the key. But I'll go back again to say what you've said. When we do organize, we're going to reach out to veterans, and we will not forget you.
And it will be continuous, and it will be long-term, and it will be labor-intensive, because we want our volunteers to come and actually have their hands on and try to coordinate their activities with whoever they want to reach out. It's not a simple matter of, okay, I'm just going to make a donation, my membership fee, attend a meeting, and have a few drinks, and then I'm gone. Now, this is really a hands-on type of organization, and I think there's going to be a lot of self-satisfaction, fulfillment. Because let's face it, Ben, the Vietnam veterans are not getting younger in a minute.
Yeah, I'm figuring that's how people, I'm hitting 70 now, and I'm going, oh my Lord, and I was 48 years, and I went in at 66, so I'm going, wow.
Yes.
But it's veterans like myself that need help, but it now boils down to the Iraqi and Afghanistan and Gulf War.
When they're younger, we will show them exactly what we went through and how the VA works, the system works, and yes, how your service connection disability application needs to be filled. I can do that. I can help you also with what medical issues that can be applied there, and that which will be rejected and which will be accepted. And it's just a matter of putting all the knowledge together in one organization, and all the members have all the knowledge to take this and help somebody that they are able to reach out and not abandon him when things are.
That's the key, turn our back, and that's not what we're going to do. But the other thing is that we're not going to organize to compete with people like the Vet Center. Our mission is going to be different. I know we're a little evasive on what our mission is, but believe me, when we make that final press conference, everybody will be elated and proud. We'll be proud, but the public will be proud, along with the veterans, of our ultimate goal. But thing is that we will not forget any of the veterans, but I want to say, when I drew this on a piece of paper for you, a little logo, if anybody knows about the 100 Club, they have the insignia on the back, 100 Club of Connecticut, our insignia on the back, and yes, it's going to be a club that is going to support veterans, and what our insignia is a V for veteran with American flag, and then it's going to be the date of membership. But we're going to sit down and design that. I've got it in my head, and I've drawn it out. I think it's pretty unique.
I think so too. So all of this are just still in our head, but our head is so full of it.
Well, good, yeah, but good ideas. And
it's basically just putting it down on paper. I attempted to make a few words that would fit some of our mission. And one, of course, is respect, advocacy, commitment, and long-term, reaching out, and brotherhood. And again, it is through President Lincoln's promise to care for those who shall have borne the battle, and for their families and survivors. And so yes, we are going to start this organization. This is not another organization just to raise funds for veterans.
No.
It's not going to be like that at all. It's going to be hands-on. We want you to be able to help fellow veterans, because it is veterans to veteran.
Well, the key is, Ben, I think we haven't really discussed this, but it's something that we'll ultimately discuss when we all get together. But, and I talked to Richard Frederick, who read over these bylaws, and he said, do you really know what you're getting into? I'm very supportive of where you're going, but it's somewhat overwhelming. So let's see, let's sit down and talk about it. And that's but the key, whether I want veterans of Connecticut or veterans of Southeastern Connecticut, either way, it's overwhelming, because there are a lot of veterans out there.
Yeah.
And I want to say, not to say being redundant again, but also not compete with the Vet Center and what they also do, whether on Cliff Street or at City Hall. our mission, when it's, when it's expressed in more detail, they'll see that we're there to help veterans at the vet center and the VA that's at City Hall can't do, or I don't say they can't do, but will be the clearinghouse.
We will be able to help them do that. And again, we are not going to take away what those agencies are doing right now. We are going to supplement them and facilitate veteran in going through their system. So we are not going to do any counseling because we are not clinicians. We're not going to do rehabilitation because we are not rehabilitators, but we can certainly ease them to come in on their appointment, get into the vet center, give them the help they need, make sure that they get their doctor's appointment if they're being referred to, and make sure that they continue on what their doctors had been giving them the instructions on. And of course, you don't want to just see them all of a sudden. You don't find them going to the VA clinic, and you wonder what happened. Well, he was just left out, and then he's what we call as lost to follow up, and that is not really good.
Well, there's a lot of people that we can reach out to, and I know we've got a nucleus here, but the gentleman that comes to my mind that is a proud veteran is Kevin Brown, chairman of the Mohegan Tribe, and I know he'll be involved. Speaking for him, I'm sure that he will because of his background and his patriotism. But so many other people that we can reach out to that are going to help in this endeavor. It's just overwhelms me sitting here with you, knowing that you, of all people, have supported this. And then you, and then, of course, Tom Burke, he's been very supportive. And then other people, when I continue to talk, want to get on and help. So it's going to be overwhelming, but guess what? There's going to be gratification ultimately when it's finished.
Very self-fulfilling. And I cannot see any other volunteer work that would make you feel like you are doing something for your fellow citizen. And so this will be very gratifying, like you said, Ben. So
well, I have to do that. I just feel like it's not obligated, but it's just something that I have to do. Emotionally, as you well know, I can say it right on the screen here that I've lost it emotionally. I get emotional. It's like we had talked about before, my history. With all that idle time, everything caved in on me. And there are a lot of other veterans, whether it's Army, Marine, that had some worse circumstances than I did, but we all treat things differently. So I can say that emotionally, and my emotions are attached to the veteran to help them, like you have. My Lord, you've done so much for veterans.
Yeah, we've done, and I really feel, every time I see you, I said, oh yeah, Ben, he is really somebody that had just something good out of his heart to give to the community. So I even told him that he should run for mayor again.
Well, I'm sure that my wife would speak to that. That was in my thoughts at one time, and not to say it still won't be in my thoughts, so might as well stir the pot a little bit. But I feel like I've got a lot to give, but I think that my, here we go, being redundant again, visionary objective is to get this veterans organization going so we can help veterans, because that, being mayor, and I sympathize with the past mayors and the current mayor, Mayor Hinchy, that, bureaucracy prevails there. It's not good in some manners, but it's to draw a coalition, and that's what I'm trying to say, that we've got to draw a coalition, but politically it is difficult to draw a coalition. We're in the organizational aspect of helping people. They are also, but politically motivated, and they just can't get it done sometimes. It's difficult. As this current consul finds out, I spent 12 years, and sometimes you'd leave City Hall and you'd go, oh, God, it's difficult. People don't understand the process.
Well,
this process is going to be different. This is unique to the veterans that we will reach out.
Well, it's because we have a common goal. Everybody has a common goal, and everyone has a consistent way and procedure of how to approach and solve that problem. And, unlike politics, yes, they have a goal and they have a problem, but then everyone has their own different ideas of how to approach it.
Well, that's the fun part of politics. It's how you can connect and disconnect
That's
and
right.
collaborate.
Yeah.
But I guess it boils down to compromise.
Right. Well, it comes down to...
I don't like that word, compromise. though.
no, I think that is kind of a double-edged sword. I read the newspaper today about our state budget on how much billions of dollars we are short, and that's because since 1939 we have not been funding completely the retirement
Pension fund. yeah.
pension fund and the healthcare fund. So now, over the years, it just kind of accumulated, and now Governor Malloy has to figure out how can you do this. And well, I would say that good luck to him. I don't have any idea.
That is certainly overwhelming because I don't know how they're going to do it. I know they've got a tentative budget, but
Yeah, the way I look at it right now is that you're going to let your grandchildren pay your retirement, and when it's their turn to come up, then their grandchildren will pay for the retirement, and I'm not even sure that they will be able to do that.
no, we'll be in bankruptcy by then.
So that's a lot.
What
That's a lot.
state just declared? Oh, Puerto Rico hasn't been able to, meet their goals
Right.
financially. So that could happen to Connecticut.
Right, and well, I hope it won't, but unfortunately, I think they said that the state of Connecticut is the fifth lowest of the ratings of their in terms of debt. They have the fifth
Yeah, they just
lowest.
lost their bond rating, but
Right.
went from AA plus to AA minus.
Right.
But that's difficult when you're out trying to sell some bonds.
It is a big problem
It's,
for the state,
costly.
and unfortunately, we as the citizens of Connecticut will probably have to put in our share of trying to get us out of it. But it's not going to be like overnight. I mean, it's just like owing your credit card that you've been not paying completely, and you've always been taking in negative every month and so on, and then finally after 10 years it just catches up on you. It's $100,000. And what are you going to do about it? Well, you're not going to come up with $100,000 and pay it off right away. It's going to take years, but at the same time it will have to be kind of cut the expenses a little bit.
So that little credit card, that little piece of plastic created a lot of
Oh,
problems.
yeah.
Don't worry, pay tomorrow. Yeah,
That's right.
Pay me now, pay me later.
So anyways, my experience with some of the veteran service organization has been quite good. As you probably know, I was a member of the VFW, was post commander of the VFW of Norwich, and I went on to become the National Surgeon General and get a chance to see how the VA system worked from the Department of the VA. I testified on a few bills on what we want to do for the veterans, and there was a time when I wrote a proposal, and that is, at that time, is to offer all the veterans free of charge for any vaccines, and so of course that did not go through, because after my testimony with the subcommittee on Veterans Health, all the drug companies came in and opposed it, obviously.
You hit a chord there because I'm fortunate to have my prescriptions for my COPD through the VA. And somebody said it depends financially where you stand, and I said it shouldn't be financially where you stand. Anybody that has served our country in any capacity should be afforded that, whether they make $100 a year or $1,000 or $1 million a year. They should all be given as a veteran that have some the sacrifice to keep our freedom, that they should enjoy, the family should enjoy that. And that's part of our mission with Veterans of Connecticut, that we offer that to the family, some type of financial help. But that's on the road again.
Well, that was my second proposal, Ben, that I was called in, that I submitted to, and I have to defend it and testify again. I said, why should a veteran be charged differently, because there are 7 levels of priorities and so on. And of course, I understand that you don't charge anything for those with 100% disability, or anything from 50% all the way up to 100%. But those, you said, who can afford, should that be charged differently from those who are able to maintain their membership? And so I would say that any veteran should be able to fill their prescription at the VA pharmacy, the same discount as any veteran that are patients there. So I made a very good presentation for that.
Well, but look, though, I mean, that was years ago, but what has become of that? I mean, a lot of that system that you had, suggested is reality at this stage.
Yes.
And I look at what you led me on to with helping me with the Healthy Vet
Yes.
website that
My Healthy Vet.
is very informative.
Right.
You can fill your prescriptions there.
Right.
You can get advanced premium, or
Yes.
it's unbelievable what's out there. And you know what?
Yes.
That's what we're going to. A lot of veterans don't know that.
That's right. And again, you have to let them know that that those things exist. And my Healthy Vet is.
But Ben, I'm going to interrupt you and tell you helped me. So that your information that you have is incredible, that you can give and you continue to give compassionately to the veterans.
Well,
You've helped me immensely, but led me into where I want to go now. And it's just a little boost of saying, let's go full charge ahead.
That's right. Yeah. So going back to that prescription cost, that was my second proposal. That was supposedly to build at least
See, you were a visionary,
long time ago.
right? You were a visionary.
Well, like I said, after I made my testimony, I was followed by all the lawyers, pharmaceuticals, big guns. This is why it should not be even considered.
Well, I always look at what you just said about, bureaucracy prevails there because it's called economics.
Right.
You want a piece of the pie. But it's also that I think that we have to have some type of a war throughout the world, if I might say, for economical reasons.
Yes.
Connecticut's economy itself is based on wartime, but we have to support the system. But it's called the mouse and rod too, because somebody, it's like any nation that has war with the United States comes out a rich nation, do they not?
Right. Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, we're going to make Vietnam now as a partner for our TTP. And they're going, and as a result of which, major manufacturers now are setting up their plants in Vietnam, because they are now going to become exclusively the factories for a lot of big companies, like Nike is one of them, and there's a lot more that are coming in, because now, when we signed that agreement of the Trans-Pacific partnership, we are actually putting together an alliance of very few nations.
Well, that's world economy. It's no different than President Obama went to Japan to apologize for Hiroshima. That's history. Wartime is hell, pray for peace. Let's face it, that was a motto that we all use when we were in the service. But, we have to have a conflict someplace.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but it's all relative to our economy.
Well, that is what Eisenhower was warning us, that pretty soon you'll have these companies and corporations that are too big to fail, that you have to keep on feeding it.
Well, there was a book out called Too Big to Fail. I'm sure you read that,
Right,
but that was interesting also.
Right.
But they failed. And that was in, 2008 when Wall Street collapsed?
That's right. So, when this corporation is so huge, you really have to keep on feeding it. Now, I remember one time, Ben, when I first started here in Connecticut, about 40 years ago, or close to 50 years ago, I would go, and we have a lot of patients coming from electric boat, but every 3 years they would be threatened. They would threaten to get those contracts, because otherwise they would lay off all those employees. And I would say to myself, wow, the electric boat really got our politicians and government right where it hurts. So you got to keep on feeding it in order to keep it going, and in order to keep the economy going.
Okay. And, you know, the old cliche again, complacency breeds competition, but
Yeah.
you're right about that. You've got to keep on going, fill the voids.
Yes.
But there are obstacles, but you have to fill those voids, and that's part of the, you know, competition with what we
Right.
say globally. It's all global now.
Right. Well, I'm not an economist, and I really feel that I'm way, way, way behind in thinking as far as, you know, how the world economy runs and so on. But I know a lot about veterans. I know a lot about the VA. I know a lot about the outside services that are being offered for veterans. I know a lot about, you know, private medical care, and I know a lot about how the veteran can get their care in the private sector if they don't want to come to the VA. And this
Yeah, but you know, it's testament to you every time that I talk to a veteran and I say I go see Dr. Hong in the VA facility in London. Oh, I know Dr. Hong, I see him. So you've reached out and made a difference, and you make a difference with your professionalism, but your compassion.
it's a funny thing now that you
You're not
mention
just a doctor.
it's a funny thing now that you mention it, Ben, because I treat veterans at the VA that comes in there, and then sometimes I say, "Oh, I know you." I says, "You used to treat my grandfather." I says, "Am I that old?"
Wow, it'd be kind of difficult, but I'm looking at that. I've gotten old, and
And all the receptionists will be laughing because, you know, I mean, this is not a young guy. And this, oh, yeah, you used to, we used to come to your clinic and you used to treat my grandmother and grandfather or my father. And now I'm treating them here.
yeah, you know, it's again back a testament to your staff, because they can be, you know, humorous, but
Right.
they're very professional also.
Right.
I've never had any problem down there. They're great.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
So in any case, I just want also our audience to understand that, yes, that we're trying very hard, and we're trying very hard to serve the veterans because, again, like you said, that's our mission. Unfortunately, again, we cannot please everybody, and I think it's just a matter of trying to figure out how can we communicate in a way that we can learn from the audience and from the patients and from us. And I know that there was a time when the VA was so rigid, and you go in there and you either sit down and listen to what they tell you and take this and so on, or you get out of there and, well, those no respect staff are still there.
Well, you've changed that. I mean, you have changed that, but it's the offices that it's just a job, and it's not the compassion within the job. Or I'm getting my paycheck at the end of the week or whatever. Well, you know, everybody needs a paycheck, but consequently, with the paycheck comes in responsibilities.
Exactly. And that's where we come in, because when they come out, they sometimes don't know how to feel or what am I really to expect. There's a lot of uncertainty.
Well, I look at the bylaws here, Ben, and I know you've read it. It's got members and meetings and nominations, board of directors.
Yeah.
I can go through the whole thing, which is,
It's like the VA.
well, yeah, pretty much, because
Yeah.
it's overwhelming, and I know we're going to simplify our bylaws,
Yeah.
whether it's Article 1 or Article 10, but, you know, I'm kind of impatient on my endeavors here, if I might say, that we, I don't want to give a timetable because it would be premature, but when we can get everybody to sit down and talk, and it's just, it's going to be wonderful when we do the, you know, have a press conference.
Right.
And it's going to be, you know, that's our goal, of course, but
Yes.
the compassion of everybody involved that wants to get involved,
Yes.
and their ultimate goal is to serve as veterans.
Right.
Can't wait. I mean,
Yeah. And there are a lot, by the way, I just want to mention this also for any listening veterans. There are a lot of agencies out there that can provide help to the veterans. And just to mention a few, I'm sure you've heard about Wounded Warrior. I'm not. I'm sure.
can I add to that?
Yes.
I hate to contribute to television promotions, and Wounded Warriors on, and I'm sympathetic. They do a wonderful job, but
Yes.
I'm upset of greed and the
That's right.
bureaucratic greed that was
Yes.
developed there,
Yes.
of the two CEOs,
Right.
$1 million and all
Yes.
that. Let's not take away ultimately from what the mission was.
Yes.
That with us will never happen anyway.
And that is where we should also understand that we have to have an oversight that can also look at what our manager and so on. Because in this case, in the Wounded Warrior, the CEO are left on their own. They basically are calling the shots. And
It was sad.
right. And instead of the board looking over the shoulder, they are telling the board what to do. And the board just becomes a rubber stamp for them.
Well, we won't let that happen. Not to say we're going to, we hope that ultimately we'll raise millions, but, raise thousands to help veterans, but we won't let that happen. No money's going in my pocket, no money's going in your pocket. It's here to help veterans. And the thing is that I'm sorry to bring up Wounded Warriors, who I'm very supportive of, because what they supply wounded veterans.
Yes.
And some of the people that have been on their commercial, oh my Lord, bring tears to your eyes.
Yes,
It's so
of course,
sad.
yeah.
And that's what they use for emotions.
Right.
Well, our emotions are a little bit the same, but
Yeah.
our emotions are veterans, reach out to veterans.
So there's a lot of
I
resources.
didn't mean to
there.
interrupt you on that, but
And of course, there's the unmet needs, of course, that can also be tapped in. And there's, of course, the Sailors Marines Fund that can also be tapped in. So there's a lot of resources. The DAV will provide, transportation, volunteer transportation.
do you know, Ben, if I may add again, and I apologize interrupting again, but the Sales Soldier Relief Fund is incredibly, I mean, the finances of them is unbelievable,
Yeah.
millions and millions of dollars,
Yeah,
but the
right.
criteria that you have to meet. I had my kidney operation in '76, and I applied and got, and I was making too much money, so
Yes.
but
Yeah.
I forget what happened, but we did get coverage from them that paid for part of my surgery, but
Right.
there's money there in that account, as you well know,
And, I know
unbelievable.
the history of that, and I know exactly how to apply for at least funding. It's a grant, basically. And of course, there's a lot of sub services coming from major organizations like VFW, as well as the American Legion. And you just have to understand which one it is that you can tap into. And it sometimes takes somebody who knows the organization and how to write the application. And of course, the biggest thing about the VA is that there is, of course, the benefits and service connections and so on, which, again, like you said, Ben, can be such a bureaucratic nightmare because you have to fill up all these forms and so on and so on. Then you get to get your doctor's medical records, and you have to enclose it. Someone has to represent you and so on, and then you fill up the form, and then you come back, and then within a month you get rejected. And
Well, your expertise and direction is ultimately what we have to do to collaborate and get these veterans on the right
Right.
road, if I
so
might say.
there's a way of filling up those forms, and fortunately, a lot of times somebody who will represent you may not really get to know them yet. I know this from a first-hand experience because I applied for my own service connection also, and I know exactly where I can be turned down, and I know exactly where I may not be turned down, and so on. So this, all it is really, you're not making any stuff up. You're just trying to present exactly what happened to you, but at the same time, you don't want to get shortchanged, and at the same time, you don't want to do any fraudulent entry there.
Well, the thing is, ultimately, what we want to look at is to present our veterans organization. And name-wise, we've talked a little bit about it, but
Yes.
it's like a little bit of a sneak preview. But
Yeah.
consequently, when we sit down and iron out some of the bureaucracies involved, which I think they can be overcome with
Yeah.
the leadership that you have and your qualifications and the expertise, because there's so many details that we have to work out that we don't want to be redundant, but the case is we want to overlap, but we want to help. And here we go back again, veterans to veterans.
Yes.
That's the key.
And sometimes being generalized is much better than having to write it down on details, because now we're micromanaging a volunteer to do the job that we want him to ask voluntarily. So sometimes
They have to know the details also, so
of
it's
course.
not as
I mean,
if
there's
they...
going to have to be a rule, obviously, that you don't cross.
But I'm enthused, and I can't wait till, you know, I'm not saying it's going to be tomorrow or the next month or 6 months, but when we're ready to make a presentation. I am really surprised that veterans haven't called, but I don't think we gave them enough information to
That's right.
create some curiosity.
That's right.
We thought we have to some degree, but in fact we have, but we've got a long road ahead of us.
Yes.
But I think ultimately, people will be so proud of where we're going and the people that are involved,
Yes.
especially you, and I can't say enough good things about you, that, you know, consequently, it's the
Well,
push. You've given me
yes.
a push, too.
This is basically based on my entire life's experience on veterans or service organizations, and have worked on a lot of them. I've worked at the VA, and I can see where the void is that needs to be filled. So it's not just another veterans organization who's going to be raising money and raising funds and doing those same thing over and over again. No, this is something that is a void. This is something that had not been filled or had not been met by any of the VA extended care or any of the veteran service organizations mission or goal. So there is this big void, and the void there is that you don't allow your brother to be left behind. So you have to reach
that's the
out,
key.
pull him out, and guide him through.
Your enthusiasm
You
is,
have to be committed on a long term.
oh, it's long-term. But your enthusiasm has been contagious because, you know, with your knowledge and, again, expertise, I think that this veterans organization is going to be very well organized, but I can't wait till we can, again, get the press conference going to, you know, reach out to the people and tell them this is what it's all about.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Oh, we need
You're
a lot of
wonderful.
help on this. We need a lot of help from our community. We need a lot of help from our fellow veterans. We need a lot of help from our representatives. And obviously, those who have the, the capability of doing and delivering this type of services. And like we said also, Ben, that this is not going to just be exclusively a veteran membership, because there are some layperson who have services that they
That's the
can
key.
use.
Well, and also join our organization to support veterans. But I want to add before we're almost ready to get off the air, which went so quick. I know in the previous discussions with Congressman Courtney and Senator Austin, amongst others, have been very supportive of our endeavors and where we're going. When Tom and I had talked about with you about the YMCA and Buckingham Memorial, we're at a different level now because we're fast forward, but they'll reach out to us and help wherever they can too. So that's really good.
I think the problem is trying to go to find a structure first, infrastructure, and so you get all boggled down there. But if you have your organization and the idea written out and so on, you can push that mission.
Organized, an organized organization.
Yeah, right.
And that's where we're going. But I guess we're all done tonight, and I
So-
certainly enjoyed it.
Well, thank you very much for coming and joining us,
Yeah, thank
Ben.
you.
And
I'm honored.
it's been a
I'm honored.
pleasure talking to you, or any other veterans that might be interested in joining us again next time.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. God bless you, Dr. Hong.
Thank you.